And I'm streaming
Hello.
on.
There we go. Hi, everyone. We're live. Hopefully this is working. This is Dave Bradley. I am the strongest and best looking Bitcoin entrepreneur in Canada, of course. And I am joined by some Bitcoiners from around the country. We're going to be talking today about how do you go about getting your local businesses to start accepting Bitcoin. This is something that we've all wanted to do. This is something that a lot of people have tried. And I know this is something that a lot of people have tried to do without a lot of success in a lot of cases. And we wanted to bring some people who have a little bit of insight into this, who've been doing this in Canada for a little while now, to talk about, what are the common challenges for a business that wants to accept Bitcoin, and why might they want to accept Bitcoin, and just bring some ideas together and see if we can all get better at this, basically. So with that, I'm going to introduce those who are joining me. We might have a couple other people joining at some point during the broadcast, but to kick it off here, we've got Heather. Heather runs a podcast called Unhypnotized, talking about all things relating to Bitcoin and the mind, all those ways that Bitcoin or money and the mind affect each other. I'd highly recommend that. That's here on the Coinbeast channel. We've also got Danielle, who's a local Bitcoiner from Vancouver, who has personally been involved in orange pilling a number of businesses, and essentially has some insight into what those businesses need and want. And last, we've got Cole, who has probably orange pilled and onboarded more Bitcoin businesses than anyone else that I know of. Cole's with Coinos, and they're a great option for businesses looking to accept Bitcoin. So going to kick it off here with kind of a simple question. I think there's a lot of videos out there talking about this already, but let's just give it a quick version from everyone. We'll start with Cole. Why would a business want to accept Bitcoin?
Yeah, so for the people streaming who can't hear everything that's being said, I was just asked, why would people want to spend Bitcoin instead of spending their dollars, which is fiat, right? So some of the reasons why I would rather spend Bitcoin is because I'm supporting the Bitcoin network and its decentralized currency, and it's private, and I actually control it. So I'm supporting that movement in of itself, right? The fact that it's also the greatest, Bitcoin is the greatest hedge against inflation that mankind has ever seen, to my knowledge, right? Especially in the past 10 years. I would rather hold that currency and spend that currency compared to holding dollars and spending dollars when the dollars only go down in value, right? So some people say they don't want to spend their Bitcoin. They would rather spend their dirty fiat, their dollars, instead of spending Bitcoin. But in that case, it's better for you to just sell your fiat right away anyways, and then hold that in Bitcoin, hold your reserves in Bitcoin. Everyone's got different situations. So holding Bitcoin, holding all your assets in Bitcoin might not be the best idea for you. I'm not a financial advisor, of course, but it's better, I think, if you want to hedge against inflation and you want to raise your purchasing power, you want your purchasing power to be at its strongest, then it is smart in most cases to hold your reserves in Bitcoin and use that as your currency, right? The more you spend your Bitcoin at merchants, it also raises the confidence of your friends that are seeing you and the business owners themselves, who are then going to talk to their friends as well for them to consider accepting Bitcoin. So you're expanding the popularity of Bitcoin, and you're expanding the awareness of Bitcoin more and more when you spend it compared to dollars. I myself, financially, I benefit way more with holding a lot of my reserves in Bitcoin and spending Bitcoin. I benefit so much more than financially compared to me only holding part of my wealth in Bitcoin and spending dollars. That's just me. And it's not just me, it's me and a lot of people. But that's my experience, though. Yeah, if that makes sense. That's one. Those are some ways, some examples that other people might want to add to that too.
Sure. Let's go to Danielle next.
Yeah, so for me, it's just the more I started to kind of learn about it and the benefits and the utility of it, the more I just really started deep diving and exploring the ecosystem. And in terms of merchant adoption, I find that a lot of merchants are really curious about it and very receptive to it. And from my experiences, it's a little bit almost intuitive as well. I've found. So when I am approaching merchants, I find that there is a curiosity and they are very open to it. The dialogue is pretty transparent. The one thing I would say that is maybe like a challenge for merchants in their curiosity to want to start accepting Bitcoin is how to document it. So for tax purposes, for example. And there's many ways to go about that in terms of education. Like the guys from Coinos can help with that as they've onboarded many merchants before. But once you start kind of the dialogue and the conversation, I find that people already either have had the seeds planted about Bitcoin, and it's sort of like you walking in just opens the door for them to explore it a little bit more. But often they do see the utility in expanding their business to use it as a method of payment, because a lot of merchants struggle with fiat, right? Like if they're using a traditional POS system, accepting Visa and MasterCard, they're paying a percentage on that POS system to accept that as a method of payment, versus something like Bitcoin and using like the Coinos wallet, for example. It's zero fees for the merchant. So that's one thing I'll really highlight when I'm explaining it to them, like the utility of it and the benefit to them is that they're expanding their ability to accept alternative methods of payment that are deflationary, right? And so there's no cost to the merchant, and it's sort of like a win-win when you look at it in that perspective. Yeah, so I think overall, like in terms of onboarding merchants, it's been a positive experience in my experiences in Vancouver and Toronto so far.
You've onboarded merchants where? You've onboarded merchants in a few different places, right?
Yeah, North Van, Solano, Vancouver, and Toronto. Yeah.
Great. What do you
So
think,
far.
Heather? Why?
More to come.
What do you think, Heather? Why should businesses look at accepting Bitcoin?
I really like what Danielle said just about those fees. Like I pay thousands of dollars in fees just going through even Stripe, not even paying the never mind the merchant fees. If you have like a point of sale system. And I also think just like the ease of transaction, because if we have to keep going from Bitcoin to fiat and fiat to Bitcoin, that's just not sustainable in the long run. And it would just be way easier to just go Bitcoin to Bitcoin than have to turn our Bitcoin into fiat and then pay in fiat. And then the last thing is just that I have always been a huge proponent of voting with my money. And I think when we can pay with Bitcoin, for the customer to feel like they're doing something good for the world. This is a model that's used everywhere. Like you go to the grocery store and they're like, will you pay $1 for this pink ribbon that goes to like a bunch of other corporations that try to not fix the problem? But the whole charity thing, like obviously that model works, but imagine if we were using our money, like the customer could use the money and actually feel like they are supporting a world or a system or a currency that they believe in.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what I'm hearing is that mostly people are looking to put Bitcoin into their businesses as sort of a pragmatic thing to do something good for the world. In my experience, I've found a lot of businesses start accepting Bitcoin because they just want a way to get some Bitcoin. That's a simple way, especially for a small business, to start stacking some coins, and especially for businesses that have a high margins, like a coffee shop or something like that. If they start stacking a little bit in Bitcoin, it's almost like just a skim extra savings off the top also. So I found that to be a useful way for them to look at it. When you guys
I was on Mike's waiting to be let in as a speaker.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go here. There's Mike.
Hey.
Mike, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Michael, and I am part of the Vancouver Bitcoin group. And then I'm also a community manager for Vexel in Canada as well.
Oh, awesome. So we'll go back. We just finished our first question here. We'll ask you that as well, Mike. What? Why do businesses want to take Bitcoin?
Yeah, we had some really good answers from everyone else. One of the things I like the most about it is just the immediate settlement of Bitcoin, especially if you're using, say, Lightning. One thing when I used to own a small business is it could end up in my bank account 4 or 5 business days after we had done the transaction. That's one of the things that I think is most undervalued with Bitcoin, or that a lot of people don't know, but it's in your account immediately. If you're on Lightning, there's usually no fee or a very small fee. And that's such an advantage because you can then spend it right away. And that's why growing the circular community, in my opinion, is so important.
Awesome.
Great point.
I just wanted to add, Dave, can I add something quickly?
Sure.
To that? There's a couple different, like one question was, why should people spend Bitcoin? And then the other question is like, why should merchants accept Bitcoin as a payment option, and some benefits to that? And it's like, kind of like what Dave was saying about, they just want some Bitcoin, and it's, non-KYC as well, technically, right? And then you also get increased sales, and you get your business you get more exposure for your business. You get on 3 map websites. There's btcmap.org, openstreetmaps.org, and the Coinos map, which is coinos.io/map. So it's almost a guarantee of increased sales. Me and Adam, and like, we can, anyone that knows the merchants as well as us, we can confirm that I think 99% of the merchants have been getting increased sales since they accepted Bitcoin. So it's kind of like a no-brainer if the business owner understands it. Right?
Yeah, that's great. So the next question, I'm going to start with Danielle. And I'm interested to hear from all of you about this. And I have some of my own experiences about this as well. When you onboarded a business, like, what kind of objections do they have? Like, what are the main reasons why a business might say no, they don't want to start accepting Bitcoin? And then I guess, how do you overcome that?
So it's sort of like twofold. Some businesses are kind of a little bit already sort of well versed in the Bitcoin space. So one merchant was already familiar with Lightning, but just wasn't sort of actively accepting it, but had the familiarity and had a bit of the knowledge about it and like the utility of it. And it was more just sort of implementing it and getting it active and getting it going and increasing like foot traffic, basically. So as Cole was saying, getting like that additional marketing and getting the word out, basically free promotion. So sort of like a guaranteed increase of sales. So that's sort of one thing, is like the education piece. So where they're at individually, not even as like the business, but just as sort of like a individual along their Bitcoin journey. And then when you add the business side of it, they see, okay, I can actually implement this to like the business itself, not just me stacking sats, but I can actually use it as an opportunity to support my business with this. So that's one thing. And then, so I'd say education. And then the other side of it is, I sort of touched on it before, but like the tax piece. So I think that's sort of a bit of a challenge in terms of accounting. Like, how does that look like on their books? How do they account for that in terms of like their fiat transactions and sales, and along with accepting Bitcoin? Like, what does that look like, and how can they actually do that? And wanting to make sure that they're following it legally, like what are the steps? That's the biggest thing. And thirdly, I think it's also like, will they actually see more sales? Sometimes there's a bit of hesitation in thinking like, will I actually see benefit to this? Like, if I'm going to explore this and open that door and start accepting Bitcoin, will I actually see like a sort of positive outcome from that if I'm going to kind of accept it as like another method of payment?
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure Cole probably has some stuff to say about this since he's onboarded a bunch of businesses, but Mike and Heather, do either of you have any thoughts on, like, have you run into an issue onboarding a business, and then do you have a way to overcome that?
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, generally it all comes down to education. And I'll just quickly talk about success we had recently, but I host 2 monthly meetups, one in Langley, one in Chilliwack. The place we go to in Langley is already accepting Bitcoin. One of the main reasons we go there is because they're accepting Bitcoin. And so that's just an example of, by accepting Bitcoin, you get more customers. And then there's no businesses in Chilliwack that are available to do a meetup at that accept Bitcoin yet. But the pub where we're doing our meetup, we are trying to orange pill. And our waitress last time, we asked her if she would rather have her tips in cash or in Bitcoin. And she kind of jokingly said, yeah, Bitcoin. And then we're like, okay, we'll do that right now. And then we got the objection of, oh, I don't actually know enough about it. And I don't know how to do that. So we helped her download a wallet, explained it to her a little bit more. And then when we left our tips in Bitcoin. And I think just by orange pilling her, she even said she was really excited to show the manager owner when they came back from their vacation that she had accepted Bitcoin as her tip, just to show them how easy it was as well.
Yeah, it does seem like that's happening more and more. Like I've been in situations where the wait staff is being orange pill, and I'm sure it starts bit by bit like that. And I noticed that one of the comments said, are they worried that they won't have sales? But I think they might not understand like that, like they might be like, it's like any marketing thing. If we say, oh, you'll get more sales, like you'll be out there more. But if they don't really know like how fast adoption is, or like how many people would actually come there just to pay with Bitcoin, it could be really helpful to let them know more about the real potential that's involved for them.
Yeah. So one thing that I picked out of there that I've run into as well is this kind of accounting issue, this point of sale system issue where like they've got, especially if we're talking about like restaurants or retail stores, they've got like some kind of point of sale system set up. And the trick is like, how do we get whatever Bitcoin system they use to integrate with their point of sale system? And the best option that I've found, especially using something like a CoinOS that you can set up in like, a matter of minutes, you get them a really simple setup like that to accept Bitcoin. And then they then set up another payment method, which, would usually be called like cash 2 or something like that. They ring it in just like they would ring in a different kind of cash. And then when they go to accept payment in their existing point of sale, they just select that payment method. Ideally, we'll get to a point where all this stuff is like integrated the same way that your debit terminal is integrated into your restaurant point of sale system, but it's not really quite there yet. But I want to go over to Cole with that one. Like, is that what you've found is the best way to deal with that issue? And are there any other issues that you've run into that are worth discussing?
The issue with it not being as streamlined as the Visa debit machines is what I said. Yeah. So yeah, we've made it. Me and Adam, we've come up with something that is pretty streamlined. It's the printer and QR code option that Mike has experienced many times himself. Heather, I'm not sure if you have, maybe you have, where we have a printer it's about just 2 inches by 4 inches by 3 inches. It's pretty small. And it will print out a receipt automatically as soon as the business owner's Bitcoin account gets paid with a Lightning transaction. So they get the $10, then a $10 receipt pops out, all in fiat terms, even though it's in Bitcoin. And that is the confirmation to the cashier that they received the payment, and they don't need to open up any sort of device. They don't need to operate any device. The cashier just needs to type it in as cash in their cash register. So it's actually less steps for the cashier to accept Bitcoin in this way than it is to accept Visa or MasterCard or cash itself, because the steps in accepting cash. They got to open their till. They got to give me the change. They got to count the change, give me the exact change back. That's more steps than accepting Bitcoin in this way. So when we have that printer hooked up, which is just a hotspot hooked up through Wi-Fi, then they also have a QR code, a printed QR code that the customer would scan. So it's more work for the customer, but less work for the business owner, cashier, and less work for the waitresses at restaurants as well. They don't even need that terminal when they use the printer and QR code option.
Right. And so are there any other things you've seen commonly come up as objections? Like why would somebody not want to accept Bitcoin in their business, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, the biggest thing, there's three big things that come up consistently is the accounting. They're worried about how difficult the accounting is. So I show them the transaction history screen on their Coinos wallet. It populates the CSV file, the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet file. You give that to your accountant or bookkeeper, and it's basic math with each transaction to calculate the capital gains that you would owe, because in Canada everything's taxed, right? The capital gains is taxed with all your transactions. So that's how the accounting would be done in that way. The accountant or bookkeeper does not need to be extra advanced. They just need to be I just recommend using a fully licensed bookkeeper and accountant for this. I do that for myself, for my own taxes, right? I don't do it on my own. I get a professional to do it. And as long as they have the proper information, which is that Excel spreadsheet file on the transaction history screen, they should be able to calculate it pretty easily for you. Another big concern, another common concern that business owners have is that they think it's not going to work because they haven't had any of their current customers ask them if they can pay in Bitcoin. They say, oh, well, no one's asked me before if they can pay in Bitcoin, so that makes me think that it's not going to work out. But then my response to them is, well, no one's asked you yet because the people that have Bitcoin looking to spend it don't know about you yet. But as soon as you accept Bitcoin and as soon as we start marketing your business and promoting your business online, that's how the Bitcoin community will find out about you and know about you. That's why they will come to your business to spend it. And then the third really big thing is, lack of education. They think it's not safe. Right? So we just
one more thing I wanted to. Sorry, Cole. One more thing too. One thing I've noticed too is some merchants are hesitant because of the volatility of it. Like they see the fluctuation in the price of Bitcoin, and there's a little bit of hesitation surrounding that as well. So, they think, okay, well, am I going to lose money when I see that it drops? So again, that sort of ties into a little bit of education. But I'd say volatility of the fluctuating price, it's there's a little bit of hesitancy around it as well. But of course, once they're educated about the benefit that they're actually making money, and it's a positive, they're on board.
Yeah. So we keep hearing education. That seems to be a big key. Let's go to Mike first for this one. And let's talk about what kinds of things do we need to be educating the businesses on as we get them onboarded, as we convince them? Like what are some important facts that they need to know to become convinced that their business needs to accept Bitcoin? And what are some just generally important things they need to know for after they start accepting Bitcoin?
Yeah, one of the big things is you're saving money on fees immediately. So, it can be a little more volatile then because you are saving money if you're measuring it in Canadian or American dollars. And then just with that, as long as you have a timeline of 4 years or longer, past performance doesn't predict future performance, but Bitcoin hasn't been down over that period before. For most businesses, it seems like it'll be a small percentage of their overall transactions. So from what I've seen businesses do is it seems like most of them are hodling it. And so everyone who's signed up, especially for Coinos, since I've seen them sign up, in the last 3-4 years, everyone's up a significant amount. And that can be a really good way to educate businesses that aren't accepting Bitcoin yet, is for them to hear it from an actual business owner who has done this and has had success with it. the success stories are really important, and I think that's a good part of the education as well.
All right. What about you, Danielle?
Yeah, it's similar, sort of touching on what Mike was talking about. It's kind of like the power of numbers. Like when you have one business get on board in a community, like in a neighborhood where another business is already on board and they become customers to each other, like that's a win in my eyes. So we've noticed that, like Cole and I have noticed that, where there's like some businesses that recently got on board and they're actually within the same neighborhood, which makes it very positive because they can actually go and transact themselves in Bitcoin along with accepting Bitcoin. So there's sort of like that aspect, like power of numbers. And then I think it's like the classic, like sort of fearing what you don't know. Like it's like, like when you were learning how to drive a car, you think, okay, there's so many fears and like there's a hesitation. But now thinking back, it's like you kind of question, how would I ever have been afraid to do that? Like it seems like the easiest thing in the world. So I think it's just the familiarity and kind of just getting your feet wet with it, which is like a natural human tendency where like fearing what you don't really know. But I think as, now that we're seeing like the adoption of it grow and expand, like there is more of a comfortability with it. So that I think is helping the ecosystem overall.
All right. Let's go to Cole next with this one. What do you think are the most important things to educate a business on when trying to convert them?
Yeah, the most important thing is knowing how much safer Bitcoin is than their own bank account that they think they can trust. that's probably number one. Number two is how much of a hedge against inflation it is as well. How good of a hedge against inflation it is. Yeah, I would say those are like the two most important. And how to store your Bitcoin safely, of course, right? Like cold storage, right? Those things. Yeah.
What about you, Heather?
Well, it got me thinking because I've been doing my 15-day series about how to orange pill from a hypnotist point of view. And these are all great ways to educate people. And so, I think it's really important to remember that to educate someone, they first have to be open-minded. And there's a couple of ways that are really easy, really fast ways to kind of create a more fertile soil in the mind of the merchant, which is ask. So find out, what they're feeling about it, like what specifically for them is something that just makes them afraid of Bitcoin or worried about it or not interested in it. And then really hear, really listen. And then, like you guys were saying, tell stories. So then if you can tell a story of someone or someone you've helped adopt this and like, or even for yourself and say, oh, yeah, like I get that. Or, so-and-so felt this same way and she was really afraid to bring this in and just to cause more stress or chaos in the bookkeeping or in the accounting. But here's what she learned. And now it's, and then you could talk about like the results or the possibilities because like they heard their needs met and you just offered a solution for something that they might even be having a problem with. And then once they're open to that, then that's when to really go in with the education and be like, I got you. I will totally show you how to do this. You got support, and we'll also promote you to help you bring in more business.
Great. So once you've got a business going, and this is something that would be interesting to see from the perspective of just people who spend Bitcoin also. But like, what are some things that go wrong for the business and for the people trying to spend Bitcoin? And what can we do to avoid those? Let's start with Cole.
Yeah, I would say some of the problems that happen is most of us are aware that the Lightning Network's not perfect. Nothing is really perfect, right? Even Bitcoin itself is not a perfect means of exchange right now for like a coffee shop, right? But the Lightning Network, it's not perfect. So sometimes there's some hiccups. I would say it's very rare in my experience, but sometimes a Lightning transaction will fail if you try, especially if you're trying to pay with your own node. Like if I go to a coffee shop and I have my own Lightning node through, let's say Zeus, for example, you have a higher chance of that transaction failing compared to you using a not your own node. So like Coinos, for example, when you are using Coinos, you're essentially using Coinos's Lightning node, right? That's how Lightning wallets work. You're always using someone's node, someone's channel that they have open with other channels. So that I would say that's a difficulty that happens. It happens less today than it did 2 years ago. I think 2 years ago I experienced it more. So that's a concern. And then another problem that does arise is not enough people going to certain merchants. And yeah, I would say that's a problem. So that in those cases where there's a merchant, even right now, there's a bunch of merchants in Vancouver, like a handful, that are not getting very high volume. So in order to keep them kind of happy and confident, at least a little bit confident to stay on board, I end up having to go there myself to spend Bitcoin there to like keep them happy and stuff, right? Same with, and Adam does the same thing, right? I mean, there's a bunch of people in the community that do that, but you know, me and Adam are usually the ones boring that, like we have that cost, right, to us, and we're okay with it. But we prefer that people would go to other merchants that are lower volume. So that's a problem, is that some merchants don't get enough volume. That's a problem. Yeah. As well.
Yeah. That brings to mind a story when we were running my first Bitcoin business, which was a Bitcoin store, which is where my brand comes from, Bitcoin Brains. We had this early merchant system set up by one of the local Canadian exchanges. And we got something like 30 or 40 local businesses in Calgary set up on this point of sale system. And I think this would have been like 2014, 2015. So I think it was way too early, realistically. And after about 9 months of all these systems operating, the only business that had anyone spend any Bitcoin was the coffee shop that we had our office in the back of. And they had quite a bit. I think I spent over a Bitcoin there during that time on coffee. And other than that, nobody but me had spent any Bitcoin at any of those other 40 businesses. So there's definitely a challenge in terms of like, not only how do you get the Bitcoiners to go there, there's some work to be done to mobilize people, but then there's also like, how do people know that you can actually spend Bitcoin at that store? Like, is there signage? There's some way, you know, Bitcoiners might be walking in there paying with their debit card, not even realizing that Bitcoin is an option. Let's go to Mike. What have you seen go wrong at businesses accepting Bitcoin, Mike?
Yeah, I don't really think I have anything to add from what Cole said, but I do agree that like you'd see the odd Lightning transaction that didn't go through. And exactly like Cole said, usually it was connected to their own node. And that does seem like it has gotten better this year, especially compared to the last 2 years. Yeah, so I agree with what was said. Haven't really seen anything besides that, and I do think it is really good the way Coinos and the Vancouver community will go to as many of the businesses as they can, and it is really cool to see people choosing to go to those businesses over their competitors for the sole fact that they do accept Bitcoin.
Yeah, that is great. I think, like I said, the 2014, 2015 was obviously too early for retail. And I think we're really pretty early for retail users still, but it's like just getting to the point where Bitcoin is becoming a reasonable way for people to pay for stuff. And it is awesome to see how much Bitcoiners support the businesses of other Bitcoiners. I think that's a point worth making too, is that if if the business owner throws a Bitcoin sticker on the window and starts taking Bitcoin, that's not necessarily going to mean that they get an uptick in Bitcoin users. But what's a virtual guarantee to get an uptick in businesses when business owners become part of the Bitcoin community, right? And when they get into our local groups, our local chats, we run something in Calgary called the Sats Market. And when we've gotten business owners who've engaged with the community like that, the community comes out and supports them at a pretty incredible rate, actually. So we've seen that with a lot of the smaller businesses here in Calgary for sure. Let's go to Heather. I don't know if you have as much direct experience getting the businesses onboarded, but as a user, what have you seen go wrong at businesses that are accepting Bitcoin, Heather?
The only thing I really have to add is that it seems sometimes like Bitcoin, people don't want to spend their Bitcoin. That's the only thing I see sometimes go wrong. Because like you said, at our market, people are like supporting the Bitcoiners so much. I mean, how much wine did Adam sell the other day at the conference? You know, so it's definitely happening. And I think that's what everyone loves about it in our community is like, you can really feel the support, but it does seem sometimes that, you know, because we know the value of Bitcoin, then people are more hesitant to spend Bitcoin still.
Yeah, definitely. So we kind of need a parallel effort to get those people in the Bitcoin community out and spending their Bitcoin at the same time as we're trying to get the businesses to accept it. What do you think, Daniel? Sorry, go ahead, Cole.
Just quickly, I see in the chat there, Pablo said buy, hodl, spend, replace. Like that's really good, right? They spend and replace because then that coffee doesn't be, you spend a 1 Bitcoin on a coffee 10 years ago, but replace, right? After you spend it, you have the money to spend anyways. So you're not losing money. So if you replaced that 1 Bitcoin, you wouldn't have that cost you anymore, right?
Yeah. And that last step of the replace would have been really useful for me in 2014 while I was buying that coffee. But I know that the owner of that coffee shop is probably going to be a fan of Bitcoin forever because, you know, he made out like a bandit. His cost on that coffee was probably virtually nothing, and now he's got more than 1 Bitcoin. I don't know if he still has it, but yeah, let's go to you, Danielle. What do you think? Any other than what's been mentioned? Do you have any common pitfalls that you've seen businesses run into?
No, I was just similar to what Heather was saying that, you know, when there's more merchants like onboarding, there's sometimes a hesitancy to want to spend. So actually having, you know, this platform to be able to spend, but then there's a reluctance to just want to continue spending fiat instead of Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's pretty much all I have in the way of questions. I want to go around to everybody for some final thoughts here. Let's start with Mike. Just anything you think needs to be added to those looking to orange pill their local business and those looking to spend money or looking to get their own business onto Bitcoin.
Yeah, the main thing is that I like to point out is just instant settlement is huge, and final settlement. And so many business owners have dealt with that, like the problems that come with taking forever, and then you get charged a 3% fee for that convenience. And just like Cole said, if you join the group, like you said, Dave, and you're involved in the group, you're going to have so many different Bitcoiners willing to spend their sats at your business. And yeah, those are the main things. Doing community management for Vexel in Canada. So that's a really good way to be able to KYC, buy or sell Bitcoin as well. And I think for small businesses who, you know, not all of them are able to hodl all of their Bitcoin, but that can be a really good off ramp, or on ramp too. But if you're a business accepting it, I think it is complimentary for you as well.
Awesome. So we have one more person here who joined us terribly late, but we're going to get him in here for some final thoughts. Mike Kitt is joining us also from Vancouver. We're going to go to Mike. You can give a very brief intro of yourself, and then if you can just let us know, like, whatever your thoughts are on Bitcoin merchant adoption, like what are some important things to think about when you're orange pilling your local businesses.
Thanks for the intro. I like to be casually late. When did this start?
It started 40 minutes ago, roughly.
Nice. Um, Sorry, Jen, so late here. What did you guys already talk about on the merchant and option side? I don't want to repeat
Yeah,
stuff you guys already
we
talked about.
we kind of went over. You'll almost certainly repeat something, but we kind of went over. Why would a Bitcoin want to accept, why would a business want to accept Bitcoin? What are some common objections they might have to doing that in the first place, and then sort of what are the problems that they run into once they're already doing that. So any thoughts you have on any of those topics would be great.
Yeah, I like always selling the upside. Obviously, number go up. People like that price appreciation, seeing their purchasing power reserved. Um, I just for a bit of background, I spent a lot of time in the Bitcoin ATM space and placing Bitcoin ATMs in different businesses, and that was kind of a similar sell. They weren't directly accepting Bitcoin, but they were accepting either fiat or Bitcoin. And actually, that was some of the best DCAs I've ever seen, were people that were taking a couple $100 a month in Bitcoin instead of dollars. And I've seen some people build some pretty respectably large Bitcoin positions just by doing that. Two or $300 a month adds up. Even in my own experience, we've all dollar cost average. If you can just get that extra income coming in and you just sit on it, yeah, it can turn into a pretty nice spot. One thing that I always like to talk about with merchants when I would get the BTMs in, I think with them just accepting Bitcoin, is just the online marketing presence can be so good. Bitcoin are so rabidly passionate about posting, talking about it. So all the merchant maps can really help. I know Coin ATM Radar seem to pop up for a lot of people, coin maps, those types of things, and even just posting on Twitter. It's a lot of great exposure for businesses to accept it. So, I mean, it's literally free marketing. And I know in Vancouver, the local Bitcoin community here encourage so many of us to go and spend on a frequent basis. So, you're just exposing yourself to another set of people that are willing and ready to spend their Bitcoin, which sometimes is hard to do. Bitcoiners are hard to actually get them to spend it. So you got to have a good product, and they'll come.
All right, let's go to Danielle for some final thoughts. Anything else we need to know?
Yeah, I think it's just ultimately sort of just meeting the merchant where they're at. Like you think back to your own journey about learning about Bitcoin and the education piece of it, and perhaps maybe there was some hesitation initially to want to buy into it. Seeds were planted, and it transpires as it sort of naturally does. So building like that rapport and the relationship I find is great. And then also I know like here in Vancouver, there's a lot of there's an active community, so there's often a lot of events. So even like inviting the merchant to an event, or if there's something like educational, like there was the Bitcoin event in Victoria recently, like talking to them about other options to kind of learn about it, to see if that's something that they would want to explore. If in the immediate introduction they're not keen to onboard, but you can just expand it and say like, yeah, come meet some of the Bitcoiners, come to some of the events and learn about it more that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think definitely getting them into the community is the most useful thing that we can do. Let's go to Cole. Final thought.
Yeah. The meetups that Daniel mentioned, they're super important. We host, I mean, all in all, we have maybe 10 meetups per month in general in Vancouver, like Bitcoin meetups, right? Including yours, right, Michael? Right. So I think 10. We host. Coinos started something called Bitcoin and Coffee, which is every Monday, almost every Monday, just not on holidays, stat holidays, from 10 a.m. to noon. And every Thursday, which is like Bitcoin and Coffee, we're kind of molding it into like Bitcoin, Coffee, and beers, because it's like in the afternoon kind of thing, early evening, late afternoon. And so that's every Thursday. We're getting really good engagement there. We're increasing the amount of Bitcoin spenders from having these kind of meetups, because it's a great way to experience. And by the way, these meetups, like Mike was saying, like he picked those locations that he picked because they're accepting Bitcoin. So that's why we picked ours for Bitcoin and Coffee, is because they're accepting Bitcoin. So anyone that comes there will experience paying in Bitcoin. themselves. And then they're like, oh, wow, it's really that easy? Oh, no way. And then they start doing it at other merchants. Then they tell their friends. And then we've onboarded multiple merchants from people's friends, of the people coming to like the meetups, right? So the meetups and the camaraderie, the community building, super important. I definitely am a big believer in going to general networking meetups, like business networking meetups. I go to those right now. Just general, there's not even like necessarily a theme, but they're just business networking meetups. I've met business owners there, and I've also met some just really cool people there that end up coming to our Bitcoin meetups. So I'm just a big believer in going to networking meetups outside of just Bitcoin meetups, to help spread the word in other sectors of Vancouver, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Oh, I should probably say what our meetup group is. So ours, mine and Adam's that we started is it's meetup.com/Bitcoin privilege. And that you can see all the updates there, right? And then Mike will want to share his as well, his meetup group.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mike, do you want to share your meetup before we go to Heather to close it out?
Yeah, it's all through Vancouver Bitcoiners. So it's mixed in with bit devs and everything because they have a really good community.
Cool. Well, yeah, let's go to Heather then. Close it out. Final thoughts. What do you think people need to know in terms of convincing business owners to accept Bitcoin?
I think that's great about networking outside of Bitcoin too, because I know for me, I really got into the idea of accepting Bitcoin after having a small business. I've been talking to a lot of practitioners and orange pilling healers and small business owners that are service based. Because one thing that I learned was that you work so hard to help other people, and at the end of the day, your money just keeps depreciating value and you just can't, it's so hard to get ahead. And I found the more that I was talking about it in other spaces, I go to other networking things too, even the finance guys, like they're so interested in it because end of the day, people are putting a lot of their energy and their time, and especially when you're building a business and then also being the service provider, you're always looking for ways to store value, and you're always looking for ways to somehow feel appreciated for all the work that you're doing. So I think that's a really enticing aspect of this, and also because they know that they have that community. Like I know for me, I know that if I run into some difficulties or I have questions, there's so many people in the Calgary community that I can ask, and they're all so willing to help a sister out or give advice or even troubleshoot. And I think like even just for where we're at in the world, small businesses can also feel very lonely and just like not, supported by the community that they're in. And I think community support is definitely a reason why they would want to be a part of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I think that was a great discussion. I hope it's useful. I hope that leads to many more businesses accepting Bitcoin in the future. And I think it would be interesting to do this again and kind of check in, a year or two from now and see like where are we at in terms of Bitcoin businesses. Let's have a quick check-in, I guess, with Cole here. Like, how many businesses does Coinos have on there right now?
Yeah, we have about 70 in Greater Vancouver and the suburbs. So like from West Van to Abbotsford, or actually, sorry, to Chilliwack, about 70. Actually, maybe even more than 70. BTCmap.org shows that. Coinos.io/map can show some numbers too. And we have over 600 worldwide. Yeah, Brazil's our biggest client, actually. And we just onboarded before this call that we're having now. We onboarded another business in Mexico, a really cool one, like a full-blown resort. Like, awesome. It's cool. Yeah. So hotels do accept Bitcoin, people. If anyone that's wondering, right? So, yeah, resorts, like nice ones.
Yeah, we've got a hotel in Banff nearby here in Calgary that accepts Bitcoin. Actually, they're closed right now for renovations, but they're going to be reopening in February or March. I can't remember. It was called the Banff High Country Inn, but I think it's going to be reopening with a new name. But we'll be there definitely doing some content from the hotel once it opens. But yeah, that'd be interesting. We'll maybe check in a year or two from now and see how those numbers go. I'd like our Calgary numbers to be a lot higher than that. We need to get you out here, Cole, to sign up some of these businesses.
Yeah, I won't leave until we have at least 5, and then
Yeah.
and maybe I'll leave. Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Even Mike Kitt for joining extremely late. And we'll do this again sometime soon. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Sweet. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.